What's up, guys? It's time for another edition of Modern Meta Breakdown, and I'm enjoying finding decks that can beat Jace. That seems to be the name of the game right now. I don't know what your meta's like. Mine is super aggressive right now. Nobody's playing Jace. No, like everyone's just like, hey, if we're quicker and faster and just in people's faces, nobody will play Jace and it'll be fine. Everything will be fine. It's all good. Nothing to worry about. And so like the last couple weeks have just been pure aggro and pure, like in your face style of decks. So I decided to do another deck that can go super ham and could kill you on turn 2 if everything lines up nicely. It's a deck that had fallen off basically as Dredge does better and more people are sideboarding more hate for Dredge. This deck does worse. But it's like, it's a glass cannon style of deck, right? It's super powerful, but it can break easily. So you've got to be careful. But what's nice is that when you're playing with a particular deck that is a combo style of deck, most of the time when people board in Disruption, like hand Disruption to deal with you, your deck gets worse. But this deck actually gets better when you disrupt them. You try to get rid of their creatures and stuff like that. So we're going to be talking about Grishoalbrand, the best version of this. There were some people that were trying out splashing blue to run Jace Vryn's Prodigy and do things like that, but having World Spine Wurn in this list is kind of MVP to help you with some life gain. So we're going to go over, talk about the list, talk about kind of the ins and outs, maybe some sideboard stuff, when you might want to bring in specific cards, and maybe ways to help beat the deck, that sort of thing. If this is your first time tuning in to watch Modern Meta Breakdown, thanks for tuning in, guys. If you like the stuff, make sure you follow, subscribe, all that kind of good stuff. So let's jump into it, shall we? Bam, bam. All right. We've got to start with Grizzle Daddy, right? He's the main man of the deck, right? So super expensive. You're not going to be hard casting this guy, especially if you only have 19 lands in the list. You're not hard casting him. So we've got to find other ways to bring him out. But he costs 8 for a 7/7 legendary demon, flying, lifelink, pay 7 life, draw 7 cards. So we've got to find a way to get him out, give him haste, deal damage to you so I can draw some life, or draw cards, gain life, all that sort of shenanigans with that. So that's going to be the name of the game. Get out Grishoalbrand, attack you, draw a bunch of cards. Once we draw a bunch of cards, we've got to find something else to do, right? So the other things that we can do creature-wise, like the big payout creatures for this deck, we've also got our World Spine Wurn. It's a 15/15 with trample. So if that's going to hit you, you're going to be hurting, right? And when this guy dies, you get to put 3 5/5 worms out, okay? And they also have trample. Now, if World Spine Wurn is put into your graveyard from anywhere, you shuffle it back into your library. So that's awesome, right? You get that bonus. Hey, here's a bunch of creatures. Here's 15 damage if I get to do that. And then the next major creature in here, if I'm not just going to go on these beatdown plans and I'm going to kill you another way, Borborygmi Enraged. The enraged part is very, very important. I remember watching a Star City event where it was near the end of the tournament and a player happened to have played a Pithing Needle and was like, perfect, I'm going to shut down your deck. This will be great. Pithing Needle, naming Borborygmi. And the guy's like, Borborygmi. Got it. Guess what? This is a Return to Ravnica base cards from Gatecrash. So that block was a return, right? We went back, so we were there the first time. So there is already a card named Borborygmi. So you need to make sure if you're going to do the Pithing Needle, you have to name Borborygmi Enraged, or you will just be sad. So this is a 7/6 with trample. Whenever he deals combat damage to a player, you can reveal the top 3 cards of your library, put all land cards into your hand, the rest go into your graveyard. You can discard a land and deal 3 damage to target creature or player. So this is a great combination with your Grishoalbrand. You basically say, okay, I will sneak out my Grishoalbrand somehow, deal 7 damage to you, draw 7 cards, draw 7 cards. Cool, I've drawn 14 cards. I'm sure I've found a way to sneak this guy into play now. Then, whatever, all these lands that I've drawn, I'm just going to shoot them at your face. Here's a lightning bolt, here's a lightning bolt, here's a lightning bolt. You're dead? Cool. Alright, so that's one of the ways that the deck can win. But how do we get these creatures into play? Alright, let's talk about that. But Simian Spirit Guide is kind of our missing link to this creature base. So here we go. Sneak him out here. Okay, so here's the Sneakouts, right? There's 2 arcane spells. So we do have that Splice into Arcane available to us. Goryo's Vengeance is our graveyard base, sneak something into play. Through the Breach, if it's stuck in our hand, we haven't been able to get into our graveyard, we're going to be able to sneak it out that way. The Splice is actually relevant, okay, because there are ways to have arcane spells be able to help us out. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But Goryo's Vengeance costs 2, right? So 1 and a black, return target legendary creature. You notice that every one of the ones that matter that we're talking about here, right, are legendary. Here, I'll even... World Spine Worm, only one not legendary. But Grishoalbrand, Borborygmi, those are the guys that matter, right? These are the ones that are going to be killing you most of the time. So get a legendary creature card from your graveyard, put it into play. That creature has haste, and you get to remove it from the game at the end of the turn. So you will end up losing these guys. It's basically a one-time deal. You could splice it into Arcane, though, which you can pay 3 instead of the 2. As you play another arcane spell, you get to reveal this card from your hand and pay its splice cost. If you do, add this card's effect to that spell, right? So, for example, right, if I'm sitting here and doing like my Nourishing Shoal action, right? If I'm saying I'm going to remove a green card with a converted mana cost X from my hand rather than paying this cost, which World Spine Ward, if you guys were not familiar, is going to be the one you're going to remove. You're going to gain all this life. You'll gain 11 life. Say, here, my Nourishing Shoal. I'm going to cast it for free, but I happen to have this 3 mana just sitting here that I'm going to splice this Goryo's Vengeance onto this Nourishing Shoal. So not only will I be able to reveal this green card, remove it, so I can gain that life, I'm also going to return a creature from my graveyard because the text is basically being added on to it. After that, you gain X life. It should say, return target legendary creature from your graveyard to play. That creature gains haste. Remove it from the game at the end of the turn, right? Boom, added on. That's what the whole Splice thing does. A little cool mechanic that came out in the Kamigawa block, that sort of thing. So, Through the Breach is our other sneak out card. Put target creature card from your hand into play. That creature gains haste. Sack at the end of your turn. You can splice that for 4. Okay, so it's, you know, instead of having to pay 5 mana for Through the Breach, you can splice it for 4 mana and be able to cast it a little earlier. If things like crazy out and you have all this extra mana, because not only do we have ways to gain life with Nourishing Shoal, because the Grishoalbrand, you can draw your whole deck, right? If you're having the Nourishing Shoal, you're having the World Spine Worm, you've got the life link, you're paying the 7 life, and you're just like, okay, draw 7 cards, draw 7 cards. Oh man, I've paid 14 life now. Oh, but hey, with these 14 cards I've drawn, I've got a Nourishing Shoal, so I'll gain 11. That's nice. So I'll draw 7 more cards, right? And you just sit there and build up that way. But you have ways to generate mana, and that's Manamorphose here. Add 2 of any color, you draw a card. Sweet. We've also got our Desperate Ritual. That's an arcane spell, by the way. So you can splice that. Add 3 red to your mana pool. Great. Works really well with my Through the Breach action. Okay, so awesome. Those are our kind of accelerators. That's the way to kind of cheat stuff into play. How are we going to put stuff into the graveyard? How's that going to happen? So there's kind of 3 main things that we can use. Cathartic Reunion is the really big one. For those that are familiar with Dredge, you'll know this card. Additional cost to cast it. You have to discard 2 cards, draw 3 cards. Sweet. Faithless Looting is the other one. 1 red, draw 2, discard 2. Again, that should be something you guys are familiar with. We've also got the Lightning Axe in here. So you can discard a card instead of paying the 5 mana. 1 red, discard a card, deal 5 damage to a creature. Sweet. So on turn 1, you could be able to Faithless Looting, put a Grishoalbrand into play. Turn 2, you can cast Goryo's Vengeance and start going off. Right? You have 4 Simians in the deck. So you could be able to go off and be like, all right, I'm going to use these Simian Spirit Guides, do these desperate rituals, and splice this second desperate ritual, and like you can do crazy stuff with it, right? You can start doing all kinds of crazy shenanigans. So that's the whole objective. Get cards in the graveyards. We've also got ways to draw spells, creatures, whatever we need with Night's Whisper, right? Draw 2 cards, lose 2 life. If we're running low on gas, things haven't worked out, you've been disrupting our pieces, maybe you have some graveyard hate available, and we have to do things the old-fashioned way of through the breach instead of bring it back from our graveyard, Night's Whisper is a help setup card, right? That lets me draw 2 cards, lose 2 life. So that's kind of the name of the game. I'm going to draw a bunch of cards, I'll put stuff in my graveyard or sneak stuff into play from my hand with Through the Breach and be able to beat you down with these giant creatures that normally you can't deal with, right? When you think, a lot of times in Modern, you're thinking the biggest guys around are usually Eldrazi. But these creatures just laugh at your Eldrazi, right? They're saying, oh, you're 4/4, you're 5/5, that's cute. Nice Reality Smasher. Here's a 15/15 worm, right? Ugh, no thank you. So we've got that Noxious Revivals in here as a one of. You'll see that in the Storm-based list that run around. But you can pay the Phyrexian 1 green for it. Put target card from your graveyard on top of its owner's library, right? Well, I guess from a graveyard. Doesn't. I don't know why you would give your opponent a spell, but hey, you could. So that's running around in there. Land base, I do want to talk about quickly. You see the basics in here: 3 Mountain, 5 Swamp, 3 Blood Crypt, and 4 Bloodstained Mire. Temple of Malice. Pretty much the only time that you see Temple of Malice in Modern is with this list. If you do not see like the Temple of Malice into something else, then you're going to be out of luck, right? You're going to be like, what? He's playing Temple of Malice? What's going to happen? Well, they're going to scry something that they don't want to the bottom or to the top, and the next turn they're going to probably do like a Cathartic Reunion and be ready to go, right? And start doing crazy stuff. So that's kind of the name of the game. Temple of Malice equals Grishoalbrand deck. This whole Grishoalbrand style of play. Sideboard stuff is kind of all over the place of things that you can go for. Like you can go super hateful with the Chalice of the Void, right? You can do Pact of Negation, be all about the counter stuff. Surgical Extraction. Collective Brutality is kind of that utility card, put stuff in the graveyard. I have so many options available to me. Then you've got like, I don't want my stuff countered, right? I can pay 2 life, add 1 mana to my mana pool. I can cast an instant or sorcery that can't be countered. So that's like, I want my Through the Breach, my Grora's Vengeance to go off. This lets me do it through your counter spells. Sorry. Bantu's Last Reckoning, basically against those aggro decks. Hey, keep me alive. You don't mind having your lands tapped a little bit because you don't play that many lands. Taking a turn off, not that big a deal. You just kill them next turn, right? Emrakul, they're basically have the Through the Breach. Why not play Emrakul, right? I've got a big dumb dude. Here's an even bigger dumb dude. It's got haste, Annihilator 6, 15 damage, flying, die, right? Good stuff. Rakdos Charm's in here, again, utility card. Exile cards from a player's graveyard, deal damage for each creature they control, destroy an artifact, you know, utility stuff. Same thing for this. You get to get rid of graveyard stuff, draw a card. So it's a super powerful deck. It can win on turn 2, like I said. Sometimes the games are dragged out. Sometimes it doesn't do as well. Sometimes it has to take 4 or 5 turns before it's able to go off. So you have to be aware of it because it's a fragile deck, but it's super explosive and super powerful. Really, if you want to hate this deck out, if you're running Graveyard Hate, it really, really hurts the deck, and they have to rely on getting up to that 4 or 5 mana to be able to cast Through the Breach. You know, if you're able to disrupt them, disrupt their Desperate Rituals, things like that, you can mess with their Through the Breach. So you can be able to attack it that way. If you have exile-based effects like Path to Exile, things like that, works wonders. Now, if you're running around saying, "Oh, look at my sweet little Fatal Push and stuff," not gonna work. Okay, so really, really powerful deck. I hope that you guys test it out. Let me know what you guys think about it, and let me know what decks that you guys are playing right now in Modern. Are you running around with Jace? Or are you trying to kind of attack them super quick and super aggressive? But that's gonna do it for this episode, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in and watching, and I'll see you guys next game.